dynamic.
So listen, I'm joined here by Trent Harrison, man, and T. We go back, and I said to Laura at London, I said, listen, and actually I had Pete on this morning. I had Pete, I'm doing a big Zoom this morning. It's very difficult for me and Trenton not to have a few little stories because, well, the man's them, you know what I mean? It was kind of this whole timing of this album, you know, all of these things, the technology at the time, the madness that ensued. You know, they even made a film on this shit. When you think about Kill Your Friends, which was that book which Niven wrote.
Yes.
International, which kept me alive in a wheelchair at the end of the book. I'm like, why did you keep me in a wheelchair? Was you a complete cunt? You know what I mean? So me and Pete were talking about, the story that me and Pete was talking about was that whole blazing attitude to when I used to bowl down there with you.
Yeah.
And go in there with the dog, park in any bay, roll in there with the dog for international, didn't have a care in the world. But from your perspective, T, because for those that don't know, Trenton had this Mr. Truffles thing, could sniff out anything. You know, Public Enemy, De La Soul, you know, these people that you looked after, pre-timeless, the people you were looking after in London at the time. Because you used to be driving around in a Porsche 928, I remember well. And we had a conversation on the pavement outside the shop.
In Camden.
Camden Palace.
Yeah.
Road leads you to King's Cross. And we met. And you said, you know, I've got all this mad stuff going on and I want to come and see you. And it was really, you know, sometimes when you're making music and you're doing stuff, the set of music, when we met, a whole bunch of demos and stuff leading up to the album. And I'm not quite sure, you know, obviously with the deal with Arlington Street, it was obviously John Knoll was doing a few bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Angel and Terminator EP. But as soon as it was ready to blow, I think we met during that month.
It was a bit weird. It was weird how I came across you, saw you that day, had a conversation. John Knoll was in the mix of it.
He was in the mix of it because he'd just done the EPs. He just brokered the deal with Howie and me. You know, he was working with Harry B and Diane, which is how I knew him. And it was because I was in London and he was looking after Howie, and I was going out to Mayfair Studios in Utopia and seeing the back end of the Soul to Soul thing. And then I met you purely by accident, but I don't know how we'd met. When did we first meet? I can't remember, you know.
I can't remember when we first met. It's just like, it was just, for me, it was like that was the first meeting. But I came into the drum and bass thing because I was in the hip hop, I was in the rap, and for me, drum and bass was exciting hip hop.
Yeah, he always.
At that point, they were nicking all the hip hop beats and speeding them up. And for me, it was just like something I needed to be in. I can't remember how.
But when we met, and I was spinning all these ideas, you know, I think after that, without raconteuring too much about it, I feel that period of time in history, man, was undoubtedly, you know, the best times of our lives. I felt that what happened with this was that, you know, we brokered the deal. You know, we would now. I was now Nolly was out the window, and it was like right pitch, and it was about. And we always said it's about 2 albums firm. You need to get 2 albums firm.
I was talking about the deal because you know he nicked it.
What's that? Oh yeah. We spoke about it. We spoke about it. The whole idea was that from the perspective of Tongi, if you remember rightly, it was Davey Glick that you got me to be the lawyer. Was the lawyer on it? And I met Davey Glick in a yoga studio, and he goes, Goldie. I'm like, yeah. He's like, it's David. I'm like, David, I don't recognise you with your clothes on, mate. I clothes off, mate. You know, he's sitting there naked with his cock hanging out. Going, it's David Glick. Well, it's right what I say about you type of people, isn't it? You lawyers, little todgers, big egos. Not as big as mine. I'm a narcissist. But, you know, the whole idea of what he, you know, the whole way that you met you. I mean, you was a mastermind with it, and I've just come off a Zoom an hour ago with Robin, and my recollection with Robin was it was 2 days recording. Scotty, it wasn't. I got paid 50 quid for like a day, 3 hours. You just rolled in there, and I got paid 50 quid cash. I'm like, but you know, just talking in his ear and getting stuff done. But I'm editing that out, by the way. But the idea of setting it up, the way that we set it up, and you set it up, was a masterstroke because Tongy, the 2-album deal, it was the guy in Kensington, it was Clive Black.
Clive Black was going to do it.
Clive Black was going to do it. And then remember Clive Black, it was like, we played it to him, he shook my hand, and he went, it's a deal, it's great. And then in the evening, you said, listen, you phoned me up, I was at Dorney Tower, and he said, he said, listen, I've just been on the phone to Pete Tong, wants to meet in the morning at Maria's at 8:30.
You know how that moved? It was Danny D. Danny D called me up because he was signed to FFRR with D-Mob. And he's like, he's my best boy. And he phoned me up and he said,
God rest his
Pete
soul.
Tong wants to do this deal. And I was like, we're signing on Monday. We're signing on Monday. You got to meet him. So I said, okay, let's go meet him. Let me phone G and we'll go meet him. Maria's first thing in the morning. You're there chopping your breakfast.
Bacon and eggs, always.
Had his conversation, sat down with him, went through everything. And I was like, yo, listen, here's the deal. Here's the deal. We're going to sign on Monday.
But for
it's 2 albums firm. It's got to be this deal, 50 on top, bottle of champagne, box of champagne, crate of champagne for Danny, and we'll do it. And he took it away. On Monday, we signed with London Records.
And he was pissed.
Clive Black, I think that's the first thing, even to this day. Whenever I see Clive Black, that's the first thing he'll ask me. How's Goldie? It's like he's rubbing it in me every time. And I still do business. He's one of my best mates. But every time I see him now, his dad, one of the biggest writers in the world, Don Black, and he'll say to me every time,
was that his dad?
That's his dad. Diamonds Are Forever.
Is that his dad? I never knew that was his dad.
That's his dad. That's his dad.
My timeless people, you never know. You learn something every day here.
Don Black is Clive's dad. Beautiful guy, wicked guy. Yeah, big.
Well, you know what happened? Because you remember when you said when you got to take the phone call from Clive because Clive he's a bit pissed. And I remember he called me.
Yeah.
And I said to him, listen, Clive, listen, Elmer Fudd. He goes, what do you mean Elmer Fudd? I said, look, I shot the rabbit. I said, well, you shot the rabbit, but the rabbit Don got up and walked out of the field, mate. And he was like, and the phone went down.
It was not. I'd never done that before. But when we sat down with Tong, it was just so right. Do you know what I'm saying? At one point, at one side, it was like a record label trying to buy something hot. And then on the other side, it was a record label buying something hot, like you like it was, but knew what to do with it. And that, for me, has always been the thing that is where you sign, the commitment, where somebody you feel that someone can put the record away. And he understood it. He understood it.
If you remember, it was the only A&R man that stood for the entire 21 minutes from beginning to end.
Crazy.
Because everyone else would, like Rob Manley, Thursday night, clucking to go out to the pub. 4 minutes in, and he's like, he's going to reach for the volume. I'm like, is he going to go? My eyes are going like that, like a gunslinger. He's going to go for the volume. And as soon as you remember that volume, you're like, we're out of it, It's that we're done. Yeah, it's not for this. It's not for these people.
It's not for it. 21 minutes, man. I can remember when you told me, no single, no edit, 21 minutes.
Do you remember when you first heard it?
Yeah, I think I heard bits and pieces of it down at Rob's place, but the first time
you came over and heard it, yeah, you come over a few times at the
yeah. And it was, and from there, for me, because I was in that normal, in and out because of the hip hop and stuff, but in that normal record company bubble. When you said to me, it's 21 minutes, I was just like, my head was going, he's saying the record's 21 minutes. I might sit there with people that are like fucking in a goldfish bowl, can't even remember what they had for breakfast, and playing a record for 21 minutes. And I used to go in, I did that, I'd go in, sit down, wouldn't even really tell them and put it in and push play and sit there for 21 minutes while the movements and the orchestra and the record just kept going, and then it was nuts. Some of them got it. Some of them got it. It was like I remember this guy, Robin Godfrey Cass, because he signed to Warner's. And when he finished listening, he said it was like Vangelis. He was just like blown away. He weren't letting it go out the door. Robin Godfrey Cass. But
I think that the main thing for me was having the freedom to do it. And I was nuts. So let's face it, I was 2p short of a quid a lot of the times. And I think the idea of alchemy, you know, the rocket going off inside the box, it's just going off all the time. And I think you had to literally, a lot of the times, physically have hands on me to kind of, because it was a bit mad. It was a bit mad. But I felt that the period of going from Dorney to Stevenage, after the deal was done and finishing the album, you know, yeah. The fascia of this Pioneer stereo. You know, and you went, you want to get yourself a car? I want a Mercedes. I wanted it all. Do you know what I mean? It was that thing where I never had anything like that.
The way we had to keep the lid on the box with the rockets going off constantly, and you making the music with people that are musical, but you're beatboxing, telling them how the trumpets need to go, telling them how the strings need to go. It was nuts. With Mel Gaynor telling him how you want the drumming.
Yeah, well, I found, weirdly enough, Steve's gone through this footage, and we found there's one particular part of the video where I've got Angels Fell at 33, and I've got Gaynor with one can on, and I'm in front of him drumming out, you know, and he's struggling with the edits, and it was one of those things that the alchemy of it all, excuse the pun, conduit of putting it together, because Rob was technically gifted. He knew, you know,
100%.
He was way ahead of the field, and you know, God bless him. We looked at what we were doing with that, and obviously the irony of it. I mean, just put it into perspective. You know, I remember offering Rob the record. We offered Rob Moving Shadow.
100 million%. You can have it. He's gonna do this record, and you can put it out on Moving Shadow. And he was like, I'll work on it, but he didn't believe.
So, I mean, look, bless him, but I also think that it was a thing which is a big risk for an independent. You know, because Reinforced, remember Gus and Digo,
they had the chance as well.
I said to them, you know what I mean? Because but I guess for us, there was this other thing. And for me, the university of Mark and Digo, the university of getting schooled by those guys. So I guess, T, you know, that mad year after you masterminded the deal, I mean, it was a blur. It was a bit of a blur.
You know what it was? There was a lot going on for that music. Everybody's eyes were getting opened up to it. There was a lot of different breakaways of it. Do you know what I mean? People trying to name it, put titles, intelligent, jump up, this one, that one. It was crazy. And then there was kind of you across the top of it, which was nuts. Across the whole top of it, there was for me, it was the real shit. Do you know what I'm saying? Because everybody else was using a bit of something else. Do you know what I'm saying? It was just like, and I think the realization of what you were doing out front of everybody else kind of sat on the top, which obviously a few people got their noses put out of joint as we came along, even with the DJ and shit.
Yeah, I think that's part of the scene it comes from. I think with every genre, that's kind of the thing. But I think what was unique about it for me as a coming of age album was Robin Smith summed it up. He said it is a timeless album. It doesn't, its foothold isn't in anything. It's jazz, it's funk, it's reggae, it's all of these things.
Yeah.
And that came from the past genres which I got through all of this other eclectic music I've grown up on. You know what I mean? My other side of it. I mean, if you think about the remixes that came on the back of it, that we turned away, and the things that we were offered, and from Sly and Robbie, you know, Crazy Bartlett was the tune. Do you remember? It was Crazy Bartlett.
Yeah.
It was Hand of the Dead Body. You know, and again, Hand of the Dead Body was Mel Gaynor on drums. And it was the first time you'd hear live drums on a D&B track that were like live drums.
Proper. Yeah. Not synthetic, not made up, but actually somebody playing them.
Yeah, and that was quite. I found that really groundbreaking. You know, and it was obviously. I still got the Victory. Remember the Puffy situation when Puffy calls up and wants. He wanted me to do Victory, and I turned it down because I wanted to do the Benjamins. I'm like, I ain't doing it. And the one thing that I think was a mad part of that, because the storyline which leads back down to, which will lead us back to LA on that mad, hedonistic, crazy tour, was, I remember you called me and said, listen, Madonna's going to call you and you need to set the call. And I was in the kitchen in Bovingdon getting something. And we had the studio built there. We did all that stuff with Dave Shershin. And you said, you've got to set the call. And I remember her calling up and going, hey, Goldie, it's Madonna. I'm like, yeah. She was like, I really love Timeless. I really love the album. And she'd already, and obviously, she didn't realise how tight we were in London. She'd fell out with Nelly.
Yeah.
Looking for someone else. And of course, that someone else became William Orbit.
Yes.
And I said, look, you know, I'm about to engage on the second album. But you know, I'll fly you out to LA, come out of here, check it out. And I'm like, you know what? And I went, no. And I don't know, did you think I was mad at the time? Did you really think, from a manager's point of view?
Because so much had happened up until that point. It was like Madonna coming on the phone and saying that she needed to reach out to you to get you involved with the album. It was
It's pretty nuts.
You know, it was just another step in the puzzle for me.
Oh.
Because by that time, so, you know, Lawrence Fishburne and who's the other guy?
Lawrence.
The quiet guy, Val Kilmer.
Well, that was a big thing in LA because of course we was running around New York and we're doing the tour on the bus. That American tour, I'll never forget it. It's one of those things that was an extensive American tour. You know, on the back of the Bjork thing and our own things in our own little pockets, which we did.
Yeah.
The idea, I mean, when you said, well, Val Kilmer wants to meet you in Philly, it was in Philadelphia.
Was it in Philly?
I was in Philly because I was DJing at the after party at this club, and the was New York, and me and Governor stayed behind, and it was where I first met, you know, Val, when it came down and was like, you know, I want to see you in New York, and it got crazier than that because what happened when we went back to New York and I was seeing Naomi at the time and all this other mad stuff was happening, but do you remember the situation where Val was like, look, we were going to LA on the red eye. We were going to go to LA, and he was doing a party for Bill Clinton at the time.
Yeah.
He invited us to the White House, and I'm like, I missed the fucking plane. It's got off me nut. I just missed the plane. And I remember speaking to Val Kilmer in the White House with Josh going, man, I'm at the White House, man. Like, you should have been here, dude. Like, you should have been here. I'm like, it was just one of the most surreal periods. And I guess, you know what? And I guess that would the same be said of Getz or one of those artists now. You know, they've opened up a lot. They've gone into some different ways and different avenues, and you know, private jets and doing different things. But that particular period in time
was crazy.
It was
Naomi's party in New York with
it was the Halloween party.
The Halloween party.
It was a Halloween party, and it was me, Kate Moss, and Naomi, and it was the basketball player couldn't get his coach. He was driving a coach at the time. Rodney, was it Rodney? What's his name?
Rodman, Dennis Rodman.
Dennis Rodman. He was the host of the party for Naomi, and he's got a bus like a whole truck.
Yeah.
And he can't get around the corner, and the New York police are helping him get his bus around the corner. He's caused a traffic block 20 blocks. and it was where Val came with, and I still got the scar from me, Val, and Josh becoming blood brothers. You know what I mean? Like the maddest experience of my life. That
I
whole
didn't know you became blood brothers
yeah,
with
man,
Josh.
we got a scar to right this on, right here. Do you know what I mean? And it was, I think what was even more surreal is when I missed the Bill Clinton thing at the White House, we then went to LA and did the whole LA thing. We have a tour manager in Governor. Governor gets run over by yourself on a jet ski. You nearly killed the tour manager. Do you
Do you
remember?
remember that? That was in San Fran.
Because it was San Fran onto LA, and it was, it was no, it was the first. It was our first gig before LA. The security gets mowed down by you. Could I mean, there's a film in this somewhere. You mowed down the head of security, ran him over, and I think Justina Curtis had to fish him out.
You, Governor, and Justina in
Oh,
San Francisco Bay playing chase on jet skis.
and we had to you run him over, and if it wasn't for
Took
Justina,
him out properly, intensive care. I thought he was dead. He was floating in the water like this with his head in the water.
I mean,
When I turned him over
oh God,
and the cut was in my face.
that's what I'm saying. That whole Timeless tour, and it was only until we did a few other gigs and we got him back on track. Remember, and he
Yeah,
joined us in LA. And I always remember him saying this I was like, because he said he's going to go home, he's going to stay, he wants to stay. And I went, and I
yeah,
see him in the foyer at the hotel at the top of Sunset where we stayed.
yeah.
Governor, he's fine, it's great. We all rallied around him, and I went, "What? Are you all right?" And he went, "I'm better now." But I mean, that tour was like the drum and bass Spinal Tap, because it got crazier. I mean, I thought the first tour was really intense, and then the second one, the first one being Bjork and her own tour,
Yeah.
and then playing
Jane's Addiction.
the Jane's Addiction tour.
Jane's Addiction tour was off the chain.
That was a whole other thing. But I never thought that the music. I knew that Timeless would last the length of time, but the impact, like any genre that's come out of the UK, whether the Pistols went to, the Beatles went, the Pistols went, when drum and bass kind of landed there, it was so misunderstood, but yet, and I think the problem that we had, because it was electronica, is that you knew where to put rock music. You could take rock music and go right stadiums. You could take, an indie band and do that.
Yeah.
And I know that I fucked it, and the reason why I fucked it, and I know this. I want people to know this. The fact that we had campus radio was split. So you got WBLS Kiss, but you've also got college radio.
Yeah.
And we you set up a meet, and I was, like I said, a bit mad, but I was hanging out with Robert Evans' son Josh.
It was Josh, man. It was Josh. It was Josh.
For anyone that doesn't know, Josh, hang on. For anyone that doesn't know, Josh Evans is the son of the infamous Robert Evans. Robert Evans is Mr. Hollywood. Chinatown. It was the days of Burt Lancaster. We're talking some really big stuff. His mother was Ali McGraw. His stepfather was Steve McQueen.
Yes.
And Josh loved weed, and I loved the South American couva. So the mixture of those two things.
Oh man.
Because he was my right hand, he was like my man. It was like we would be in that thing when you get in, and you were like, if I don't pull this guy away from him.
I remember I called up George Anahosa, who still is Ice-T's manager, and say, George, I'm in London, I can't be there. Can you look after Goldie for me in LA? George said, yeah, T, no problem. I'll take care of that. And he said he went to the radio station with you and he phoned me up. He said, who's this guy with Goldie? And I told him who he was, so he kind of gave him a little leeway. And when you lot finished with that radio DJ, which was the launch of our Timeless, George came back and said, that's it, he's finished here. Those two, he said, the other guy that you said was his mate, egging him on, He said, "That's it, T. Forget America."
I think it was on the lines. I think it was. I always think about. I always think about Wu Tang, and the whole
Oh, mate.
'97 thing. I always think about the idea of like. And I always said to you, when I was in my delirious second album, Madness, and what happened? What happened to me, man? What happened in America? And you went, "I'll see what happened in America. You fucked it." That's what happened. You and your mate Josh going and told the head of K Rock to go fuck himself, and they'll never understand drum and bass music.
Never, never, ever. That was it. That was our thing. We was like 250,000 albums sold, moving. This train was moving. Bjork tour, Jane's Addiction tour, spending time in America, wooing, and then bang, came off the rails so fast. You know those films where you see the train and it's going across the canyon and then it just goes down. There's nothing saving it. You see, I've seen a film. I saw a film where the guy's running as the train's going down into the cavern. The guy's running down the corridor, and he just appears at the end of it and grabs onto something. The train goes. That's how it was. There was just nothing for you to grab onto. I was just like, I couldn't believe it. It was one radio interview. And we took this weed head with you.
Well, in a really mad way though, T. I know it's going to sound really mad. I would have ended up like Phil Spector, mate. If I, because I could have stayed in America. My dad going in Miami, and I get it. You know what? In hindsight, but for me, there was this thing. It was this arrogance. This like, I just didn't give a fuck.